House of Commons passes the Emergencies Act motion after a weekend-long debate. This is the Great White North Report. Alright, everybody knows that the Liberal government has evoked the Emergencies Act, which is something that was created in 1988 to deal with emergencies. Normally when I think about this, I would think about something like a terrorist act or a foreign war or something like that. Not something like a protest that was relatively peaceful. It just lasted longer than anyone ever expected. So what happened? It passed on a vote of 185 to 151 on Monday evening. And of course, the NDP voted in favor alongside the minority Liberal government because they need that for table scraps. That's the only way the NDP will stay relevant in Canadian politics right now, is if they follow the Liberal program and hope that they can coerce the Liberals into giving them table scraps. Jughead Singh has staked his political future on the Liberals. Why doesn't he just switch over to the Liberal side? Because he's certainly not representing the workers. Jack Layton would be rolling in his grave. He would never have supported the Liberals on this over the truckers. Truckers are workers too. They are the working class. The Conservatives and the Bloc Québécois obviously opposed it. So we're in a right-left divide there right away. The Greens are split. The two Green MPs were split on this issue. And what it's going to do is going to keep these measures in place until mid-March. The Senate must also vote, and we'll see what happens. This could have been a confidence vote, and in a sense it was. Had Trudeau's Liberals failed to get a majority, then they would have triggered another election, which we really don't need right now, because elections are expensive. And it would have resulted in another Liberal minority, because let's face it, the heavily populated urban areas in Canada support the Liberals and the NDP. It's the smaller communities, smaller cities, and rural areas that support the Conservatives. But this won't be very popular. So how do we get to this? Basically, this is something that started when Trudeau announced his CCP virus mandates, which basically shut down the border for those unvaccinated. You had to prove that you were vaccinated before you could cross borders. Now, for me in my workplace, what this meant was delays in our supply chain because the border got snarled up coming in from the United States to Canada. So the same thing the Emergencies Act is supposed to help prevent, he was already doing anyway. The Liberals were causing delays as much as 6 hours at the border. And then you need your vaccine passport to get into restaurants, into movie theaters, anywhere you needed these things. Now, by the way, those things are by March 1st, the vaccine passports are going to be gone. Restaurants are already saying, oh, forget it, it's going to be gone by next week. What's the point? My workplace has a policy, if you even get a sniffle, you stay home for 5 days. No surprise, a lot of people take advantage of that. Oh, I call in, I got a sore throat. Oh, 5 days off. We have to fill out a form at work to say we're healthy. You can lie easily about that. So a lot of people take advantage of that. There are some that did get the CCP virus and they're perfectly fine. They're back to work. So the frustrations have been boiling over, especially since any unvaccinated Canadian truckers crossing the border would have to be quarantined after returning home. And that's like a 2-week period. And you'll also be charged $6,000, which is a lot for a working man to go through. To lose that much money. Truckers get paid by how much they carry, by the load, and if they're on time. So it's affecting their livelihood. Now this started in BC and Alberta. Alberta was probably the main spot, but also in BC. Truckers from BC also joined. And they started heading east, towards Ottawa. Now when Trudeau first heard about it, he was pretty dismissive, condescending. He didn't think it would actually get to Ottawa or be as big as it was. He definitely misjudged the mood of the Canadian people, and he didn't do much. I think he started getting worried the closer it got to Ottawa, and when it finally did get to Ottawa, I think he was shocked at how big it actually was. So he wasn't present during the demonstrations. He didn't go out and speak to anyone. He didn't meet with any leaders. He didn't care. He ran away. He said Canadians were shocked and disgusted by the behavior displayed by some people protesting in our nation's capital. So he lumped all the protesters in one. Basically, it was a big tailgating party, and a couple of drunk idiots started dancing on the tomb of the unknown soldier in Ottawa. Not a very smart thing to do, I agree. And there are probably a couple of other instances. You can't have that many people protesting and not have anything. But I also heard reports about a swastika being flown. I tried to look for a picture of it online. I can't find a picture of anybody holding a swastika flag during that protest, because personally, if anyone had flown that kind of flag in that trucker convoy protest, they would have got the shit kicked out of them. Let's face it, a lot of those truckers, they're not white supremacists. Most of them, a lot of them have been in the military, or they've had family in the military, or grandparents that fought in World War II. They're not going to be... You'll see the rebel flag, but that's But that's nothing big. That's not a big deal, especially if you know the history of the St. Andrews battle flag. And also he said he would not be intimidated by those who are insults or abuse that small business workers steal food from the homeless. Well, if the homeless weren't homeless, we wouldn't have that problem of giving them food. If you cleaned up your homeless problem in Ottawa, I lived in Ottawa for 5 years. I know how many homeless there were then. I can just imagine now. All the drug dealers and homeless people in that area of Ottawa, clean them up. We won't give in to those who fly racist flags. Like, the Confederate flag is just a rebel flag. It doesn't mean it's not the KKK or the Nazis coming. Vandalism or dishonor the memory of veterans. Vandalism, really. I've seen worse vandalism at the in Toronto during the Black Lives Matter and Indigenous rights things. These guys weren't cutting the heads off our founding fathers' statues. He was labeling these people as being racist, white supremacists, which they weren't. There were a lot of non-whites there. Reports demonstrating harassing shelter facilities to get food. Well, why not? They're there. And people donated money. And then all of a sudden the GoFundMe was getting hammered with requests to stop funding accepting donations or to suspend the transfer of money. Interestingly enough, some hacker actually broke into GoFundMe and released the names of all the donations, which could endanger those people in the long run. That's another thing the Emergencies Act will do. It will allow the government to seize bank accounts of those it suspects of funding the trucker convoy or the leaders of that convoy or anyone associated with it. So when the government starts seizing your money, that's not a good thing. Now, it also started with other splinter groups of this thing, add-ons, started blockading the borders. I think Ambassador Bridge was one of them, and blockading the bridges to put pressure on the government to do something. But Trudeau panicked, and he called for the Emergencies Act. He didn't have a solution, and it got to the point where they weren't going to listen to him anyway. So what do we get? Even before it was passed in the House of Commons, the police were already cleaning it up. I find it ironic that they got the police officers from Toronto to come up. Toronto, right. Toronto police have more things to worry about, like gun violence in their own damn city and their own homeless problem, than coming up to Ottawa to arrest people. Total 170 people have been arrested. That's of Saturday. Probably more now. 53 vehicles towed, whatever. They used pepper spray for assaultive behavior. Mid-range impact weapons after protesters assaulted officers with weapons. Well, I haven't heard that yet. So they cleared the main encampment site on Parliament Hill. Ottawa residents were complaining about the noise. Meanwhile, they don't complain too much during the whole week of Frosh. There's 2 major universities and a major college in Ottawa itself. And Frosh Week is pretty noisy down there. I know, because I went to school there. But I guess a week of air horns blowing. My friend who works in the government, he said it was a hassle just getting downtown, yes. But you leave early for work. And it was like a tailgating party. So it's gonna take a long time. There's gonna be a lot of lawsuits in the courts. The best thing would be to, after it's all said and done, and would be to pardon those people who got arrested. So why did all these people gather? Well, I've been looking at pictures trying to find the swastika in here, and I can't find it. Even when I typed in the swastika, it wasn't there. You know, Canadians, I think Trudeau was also amazed at how much support these truckers had across Canada. This was became a national movement. Probably about 1% of them were idiots all across the country. But for the most part, it was peaceful, respectful in a lot of cases, and they're just fed up with all these things. Because we look at the States, look at what happened. You look at their college bowl games, basketball games, hockey games, football games, the Super Bowl. How many people were in those stands? NASCAR. How many people are attending sporting events and venues in the United States? And here we are with empty arenas. The United States is not swimming in deaths right now from the CCB virus. They've gone back to a sense of normalcy in most states. Why can't Canada do that? And now we're slowly going back to a sense of normalcy. The trucker convoy protest might have actually hastened that because the mood of the people is getting sick of things. We see what the States is doing, and now why can't we have that again? So the only thing would be the truckers blockading Parliament. But once Parliament decided, hey, let's get rid of the mandates, the vaccine passports by this date, they would have left. They would have started leaving. There's no reason to protest. Now, for the most part, the protest was pretty peaceful. Verbal altercations, but was anyone stomping on police cars? This is what happened during the G20 summit in Toronto. People were stomping on police cars and Hell, Montreal Canadiens, they go to the finals and they start trashing police cars. I remember when they won the Stanley Cup back in '93, the Montreal riots. What about the FLQ and the October crisis of 1970 when the terrorist group of the FLQ were responsible for 200 bombings and a dozen robberies, left 6 people dead. That was when Pierre Elliott Trudeau deployed the armed forces and invoked the War Measures Act. The only time it had been applied during peacetime in Canadian history. Now we got a son, or a stepson, depending what story you read, doing the same thing but for a lot less reasons. It was totally unnecessary. And then of course they're going after the funding linked to the trucker protest. It was hacked, donor info leaked online. But meanwhile, Trudeau defends his fundraiser with Chinese businessmen who donated $200,000 to his father's foundation. Who knows how much the Liberals have accepted in foreign donations. But they're so quick to say that the trucker convoy had foreign donations as well. So I believe that Trudeau invoked the Emergencies Act simply because he panicked. Or because he likes the authoritarian model that the Chinese Communist Party's buddies there evoke. But anyway, any Canadians out there, let me know what you guys thought of the whole Emergencies Act and the trucker convoy. Give thoughts in the comment section, hit the like button, subscribe if you're new to the channel. Until next time, this has been the Great White North Report. I'm in love with the